Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Faizah supposed to come today, right, Faizah?
Yes.
She made sure she's coming. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. وبه نستعين على كل أمور الدنيا والدين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا وحبيبنا وشفيعنا وقرة أعيننا ونور قلوبنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. نويت التعلم وتعليم وتذكر وتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم ودعاء إلى الهدى ودلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى مع لطف وعافية برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم إنا نسألك العلم لدني والمشرب الصافي الهني وهب يا غني. اللهم إنا نسألك العلم لدني والمشرب الصافي الهني يا وهب يا غني. اللهم إنا نسألك العلم لدني والمشرب الصافي الهني يا وهب يا غني. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. في كل الذين بدأ عادة خلقه رضا نسجد عشم كلماته. Alhamdulillah, continuing on to our book Muhammad the Perfect Teacher, an insight into his teaching methods by the great Sheikh and Muhaddis Abdul Fattah Abu Ghudda ونفعنا الله به وبعلومه بالدارين إلى أن قال حيث where he has said, may Allah benefit us by him and by his knowledge in both abodes where he has said. Number 31, admonition and reminder. Among the most important and most obvious of Rasulullah's teaching methods was that of admonition and reminding people. This method was adopted in emulation of the order of the Quran wherein Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and remind, because a reminder benefits the believers. And this is Surah Zariyat. You, O Muhammad, are only one who reminds. Surah Ghashiyah. Many of Rasulullah's teachings have been derived from his words of admonition and general sermons. I came across an academic and important point written by Imam al-Asr, Sheikh Muhammad Anwar Kashmiri rahimahullah ta'ala, while explaining the aspect of tazkir. Tazkir means to remind and to admonish, reminding and admonition in Rasulullah's teaching, and clarifying the difference between the duty of an admonisher and one who reminds others, and that of a teacher and jurist. He mentioned there are two duties. The first duty is that of an admonisher and the one who reminds others. He encourages and urges people towards action. He chooses expressions which are most effective for this purpose. He does not bother about establishing a ruling and mentioning all its prerequisites and obstacles, but speaks freely. He promises, warns, creates fear, orders, prohibits, and does not go into detail. The second duty is that of a teacher and a jurist. His intention is to convey knowledge and explain issues. As far as practicing upon them is concerned, this is beyond his scope. His explanation is scholarly and his speech detailed. He fulfills all prerequisites and chooses expressions which do not contradict his objective. Rather, this direct and lead a person closer to the objective. He does not speak freely, but mentions issues with requisites. He promises, warns, creates yearning, and calls fear together with prerequisites. These are the two duties. The position of Rasulullah was that of a mudhakkir, the one who reminds people, whereby Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, in A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaytanir Rajim, إنما أنت مذكر لست عليهم بمسيطر. So continue to remind them. It is your sole responsibility to remind. You are not a guardian over them. His position, it was not only that of a teacher. He reminded people and was a teacher at the same time. It was therefore necessary for him to express himself in a manner which would optimally motivate action and discourage lethargy. This is the natural method of teaching. The majority of Rasulullah's teachings are learned from his actions. Whatever he instructed the people to do, he did first, and they learned from him. This is why they did not require any formal teaching and studying. Had his method been as it is in our times, Islam would not have spread so far and wide. Rasulullah taught people through his actions. Furthermore, when he spoke to them, he followed the natural way of asking them to do what was required and prohibiting them from what was disliked. He did not venture into the various categories of order and prohibition. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا آتَاكُمُ الرَّسُولُ فَخُذُوهُ وَمَا نَهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ فَانْتَهُوا. Whatever Rasulullah gives you, accept it, and whatever he forbids you, abstain from it. This is the most upright and balanced way. As for delving into categories, the ulama or the scholars adopt this new method because of the degeneration of the times. When the Sahaba anhum were ordered to do something, they accepted it with all its categories. When they were prohibited from something, they abstained from it totally. They had no need for any further discussion and investigation. Had Rasulullah delved into the categories, he would have lost his position as a mudhakkir, as a reminder. There would have been a lack of practice because arguments and counter-arguments bring actions to a halt. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, keep away from the actual place of menstruation for women. Do not come close to this portion, but you may take enjoyment with the rest of the body parts. People may have fallen into haram, unlawful, because when a person grazes near the forbidden sanctuary, he is bound to fall into it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the expression of i'tizal to abstain so that it will be easiest to practice upon and they would not fall into sin. It's a long introduction. Alright, we just go back to the beginning part of the introduction. So here he says, right, so about admonition and reminder. Right, an admonition and reminder is different from teaching. Right, teaching is teaching, and teaching is basically you mention the laws and you mention the conditions. Noha, what is Noha doing? What is Noha doing? Okay, Noha, come here, Noha, good girl, come. Come, Masi, come, sit, Masi, come. Good girl, right? Come. Oh, Noha. Noha, come here. Okay, Noha wants to sit there. Okay, right. So the beginning of the chapter, he speaks about admonition and reminder. And primarily Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was someone who admonished and someone who reminded. He was someone who brought people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what he mentioned in the first part that I read through quite length, because I thought it was gonna be short, but it's quite long. So here Shaykh Abu Fatah Abu Ghudda, he mentions a very clear difference between admonition reminders and teaching and giving law. Whereas in the past, Rasulullah did not actually, clearly state the five different groups of law when it comes to fiqh. When it comes to jurisprudence, you have wajib, you have sunnah, you have mubah, you have makruh, and you have haram. So Rasulullah, while he did show and from through his actions we can derive the different laws, but he himself was not someone who would focus on that, because, and he mentioned that, but the Sahaba were so strong in the way they were in their iman, that whatever the Rasulullah did, they just do, and whatever they didn't do, they didn't do. So for them, there was no need to distinguish what was haram and halal and what was wajib and sunnah, because whatever he do, they do. And then there was no need to distinguish between makruh and haram, because whatever he did not do and he warned against, he will not do. So, and that is because there's the strength of the iman. So there's no difference to them, like sunnah, wajib, whatever, no difference, because if he does it, it's good. He just do. And that's called being a true follower. If he does not do it, then it's not good. Then don't do. Then it's being a true follower of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But in our time, he was mentioning, in our time, we are so deficient in our worship and our dedication, our love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that we have to be told what is wajib and what is sunnah, because we so easily feel overwhelmed. Right? So the Sahaba, they didn't distinguish, because to them it is natural to just do everything. So it is a form of weakness, that we actually have to specify our haram from makruh and our wajib from our sunnah, so that it's makruh, okay, if you did it also it's not haram, and then it's sunnah, it's not wajib, that kind of thing, right? But it just shows our weakness of that. But of course, the best way, if you want to encourage people on the path, is just to encourage them to all forms of goodness without distinguishing. Try not to distinguish. And then sometimes even when you teach fiqh, you tend to say wajib and sunnah, because also you worry people can't hold up the sunnahs. So you tend to do that. But the way my teacher will always do it, Mariam, she will always say, whenever she will go through the sunnahs, she will always say, okay, I'm going through sunnahs, but I don't want that you, when you learn the sunnahs, you dismiss the sunnahs, because she will say that first and foremost, for a student of knowledge, it is unbecoming of a student of knowledge to dismiss sunnahs. Unbecoming, she said. The sunnahs, especially the mu'akkadah, is wajib on the student of knowledge to do. Wajib not in the Sharia sense, but in the linguistic sense. Linguistic meaning, linguistic speaking, you must be doing it, so you must be doing it. Well, of course, if you refuse to do it, then it's not haram lah. Right? But she will always say that every sunnah, it is a light from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that will guide you to the path of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Every sunnah elevates you in your closest to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They will go through all the hadiths and the sayings of the goodness of sunnah to encourage sunnah. So people don't dismiss sunnah. And also at the same time, when they speak about makruh, they will also say that makruh, what I'm saying is makruh and it's not haram, right? But makruh shows a deficiency in your iman. If you go into makruh things, makruh means is disliked. So why would you do something that Rasulullah didn't like? He didn't like it, right? So someone who just dismisses of makruh like that is makruh. It's makruh, right? It's as if you don't care for the likes and dislikes of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If you truly love someone, you would really care for their likes and their dislikes. Right? So if you love your mother, you know what she loves, she doesn't like, so you won't do what she doesn't like, and then you would tend to put in your effort to make sure that she's happy at all times. So that is how we should understand sunnah and makruh. And that is the problem in our time, especially in our society, whereby they dismiss sunnahs, they don't see it as major. When I was in Tarim, they would really focus on sunnahs, because to them it is it's a problem in your iman if you're not concerned about sunnah, and it's a problem in your iman if you also dismiss makruh. Like, makruh je. There's only makruh. There's a kind of talk we hear in our society. It's just makruh. It's never just makruh. Right? It's something that Allah doesn't like, and therefore you should not be doing it at all. Right? And a makruh meaning that if you have to and you fall into it, then it's not sinful. That is the meaning of makruh. It's not like you have a choice And if you want, you can do it. You don't want, you don't do it. No, it's actually you don't do it for as far as you can. Then if you have no choice but to do it, then you do it. That is how we should face makruh.
So like the food thing, if it's been served, you eat it.
Yeah, if no choice.
And the lamb,
If you can avoid it, then avoid it. Like this makruh food.
But if it's been served, do you like finish?
If you can, or always you have to eat everything. Then they put it on the plate, is it? Then that one no choice. That one is a guest. You're a guest. Yeah, they gave you when you're like killing them. I just eat it. With the niyat of making or pleasing whoever is serving. Yes. But whatever you can avoid, you should avoid of what is makruh.
Do we wait longer?
Yes, you istighfar. In the sense, of course, there is no dosa. There is no sin with makruh, right? But it does bring a negativity to your spiritual self. There is a negativity that will come in the spiritual self, right? If you were to engage with the makruh. So,
You have
it's a negativity to the spiritual self. It's not dosa, right? But it's negativity to the spiritual self, which means that you tend to, in a sense, it will push you away from sunnahs. And it will push you, and even if you do it more and more makruh, it will push you eventually to haram. Or it will pull you away from the wajibs. So all of these things, they affect the soul. So the light in the soul, the guidance and everything, it get affected. So don't take makruh to be something light. So for example, of course, drinking the left hand. As far as possible, you should never drink with your left hand, ever. So, but if someone, and I cannot think of a situation whereby you are really, unless you lost your right hand, your hand is cut off, or you can't use your right hand or whatsoever, right? But if let's say your right hand is occupied, and you really want to drink with your left hand, I would say wait until your right hand gets unoccupied. And if you're carrying stuff, and then you're like, no, I want to drink, and then you're holding your bottle there with your left hand, and your right hand is like carrying all these things. As far as you can, if you can transfer over, right? But if you can just wait until you reach a place again, you put the things down, and then drink with your left hand. Same thing if drinking standing up or eating standing up. As far as you can, you should avoid doing so. So just wait lah. Wait until you can sit down and drink and eat. So because all of these macro things, they affect a person's soul. It affects his spirituality. And you don't, and if you understand the negativity that comes into a person because of the macro, you will stay far away from makruh. So one of the things that really I find repulsive is when people who smoke, right? And you tell them you cannot smoke because it's haram, and now it's worldwide unanimous. There is nowhere in the world whereby they say that the smoking is makruh. You can check. Every Singapore fatwa since what year they already put out that the smoking is haram. Right? So haram. I don't know what year they put it out. Right? But worldwide, unanimous. There is nowhere in the world whereby anyone says that smoking is makruh. But you still hear people till today. This is how many. I think they changed the fatwa. I think about 20 years ago. They changed it from makruh to haram long time ago. But till today, you have some people out there who keep saying it's makruh, whereas nowhere you will find in the fatwa whereby anyone's fatwa whereby they will say it's makruh. Everyone says haram. Smoking is haram. Full stop. The thing has been changed for how many years already? My mother-in-law. Say my mother-in-law. Should I call her? Should I pick up? Pick up. It's being recorded. Assalamualaikum. Never mind.
We recorded, right?
Yeah. I can't stop it. But she called me yesterday, and I was teaching. Because whenever they call me, I happen to be teaching, right? So I tend to not respond to calls. But someone called me. There is somebody called me rude for not picking up calls, and then I said wasn't enough. So but then I'm teaching. And my schedule, I teach quite back to back. So it's very rare. And by the time I can get to my phone, it's really late at night. And I don't want to return a call late at night. I don't feel it's right to call someone late at night. Or like whenever I get to my phone, so like it's prayer time, it's Maghrib time, it's, you know, like you don't want to call someone at that time. Thinking I'm not calling anybody. Yeah, it's like for me it's, but my mother-in-law must call lah, because she does not text. It's not text. Right. Okay, so Bismillah. Right, so it Masih nama Muhammad.
What more haram?
Oh, haram is haram will do haram is will just destroy all the positiveness on you, and just make you all negative all the way around. That is haram. Haram is haram is haram. Haram is just stay away from haram for as far as you can. Don't even go near the haram. Right. So subhanallah. Right. Sayyidina Muhammad. Right. So that's why, you know, it is repulsive lah. People who, you know, I like, for me, I get something that I never heard when I was studying. People who just makruh je. You never hear it. When they say makruh, they will like stay away. Straight away, it's as if they see it as haram. They see it's haram, makruh, and they will not even consider what. Right. And sunnah, I see them sunnah, they straight away they cannot do it. Right. They won't even, you know, like, oh sunnah, never mind lah. You know, but no, subhanallah. Like, that's why here he's saying that, you know, we have come to a point in our society whereby for Rasulullah, he did not actually, you know, verbalize what is makruh, what is sunnah, because whatever he did, the Sahaba will just do. They don't have to be told wajib, sunnah, because for them, he do, we do. They don't have to be told makruh, haram, because for them, if you don't do, don't do. Don't do. Right. There's a hadith whereby there was a Sahaba. He saw one of the tabi'in, one of the people that later on, he was doing, basically he was killing animals, right, using you call it what do you call it? What is it called? Like a catapult, which is basically, or some did not allow it. Didn't allow for, because they used to kill and eat. They would eat the animal basically, but they used a catapult, right, basically with stone. So he saw some of the tabi'in doing it, and then he said to him, Rasulullah said, don't do that, right? Don't do that. Like, that's it. They won't say whether it's haram or makruh or what. They say don't do that, right? Then after a while, he heard him doing it again. Then he said, are you still doing it after I said the Prophet said don't do that? Like, I mean, do you have to say it twice? After I said the Prophet said, isn't that enough for you? Then I said the Prophet said. That was the Imam of the Sahaba. Just by the word the Prophet said, it's enough. Don't do it. Right. So I mean, you don't have to ask me makruh, Haji. Is it makruh? You're like, he said. Don't do it. Right. That was the Imam of the Sahaba. Right, so our iman is like, you know, we have to at least like you know, like you see smoking, when it came out to be makruh, that should have been enough to leave it. It should have been enough. It's foul in its smell, like it makes things smell foul. That's why it was makruh. It was they qiyas it to garlic, being smelly. It's not a good smell. And when you go to the masjid, it's not a good smell. But now they see that smoking is harmful. Not to just the one who smokes, but the one who's around him smoking, the passive smoker. Right? So harmful, there's no argument about harmful. Harmful is haram. Right? From the beginning to the end, harmful is haram. Right? But from the first part whereby you say, you know, smoking is makruh because of its smell, right? And that angels don't like bad smells, and the Prophet does not like bad smells, that should have been enough for a true believer to stay away from it. A true believer will be like, oh, but the angels don't like it, the Prophet doesn't like it, right? So I don't like it. And so the Sahaba were, whatever he liked, even some Sahaba said, just because he liked pumpkin, I forced myself to like pumpkin. I actually forced myself to like pumpkin. Like he liked the colour green. You're gonna make yourself like the colour green. It's gonna be my favorite colour from now on, green. Right? I'm not gonna have another favorite colour. It's only green. Green for everything. Right? Why? Because that's what he liked. Right? Subhanallah, like, it was the favorite colour of Rasulullah. Right? So I mean, Sahaba were like that. They were like that. Like, whatever he liked, we like. He don't like, we don't like. You know, even if you liked it, but because he doesn't like it, you don't like it. That's it. So this is the meaning of, but that's why he began the chapter by saying Rasulullah was someone who warned, and someone who admonished, someone who encouraged. So in doing so, it's difficult if you keep going into the technicalities of the of the law, because we're trying to do just encourage people, right, to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? However, in our time there is a need for jurists, there is a need for fuqaha, right, because of the time whereby people are far from obedience and they need to be told haram for them to actually stay away from. And even then, our times when you say haram, they still don't stay away from it. Yeah, and you need to say to them, it is wajib, to emphasize wajib. Then they will do it, and even then, some of them are still, on the side of they're lazy when it comes to wajib even.
Even the prayer, you tell them it's wajib.
Yeah.
It's not something that moves them.
It does not strike them. It's wajib. Like they don't get it. They don't get it. You must pray 5 times a day. You must. It's not like there's a way around it. No. If you don't, then answer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But you must pray 5 times a day. Right? So here it says here. So whatever the Prophet gives you, accept it. Whatever he forbids you from, abstain from it. And this is one of the ayat whereby some people who claim things to be bid'ah, they like to use this ayat, and they will say, look, whatever he forbids you from, abstain from it, and whatever he commands you on, then do it. Then they say, whatever he gives you, then accept it, right? So they say, oh, you see, so that means you can only do what the Prophet ﷺ has done, and you can't do more than that, right? So, but the ulama will say, look at the ayat again, right? Whatever he came to you with, do it. Whatever he prevented you from, don't do it. There is nowhere in the ayat that said whatever he did not do, don't do it. It's not there in the ayat. It just says whatever he did, do. Whatever he didn't do, don't do. But there's nowhere in the ayat whatever he didn't do, like what he did, do. Whatever he prevented you from, don't do. It's not whatever he did not do. It's more whatever he prevented you from. Because there are many things in this world that he didn't do. Right? He can't possibly do every single thing, to show the hukum of every single thing. Right? So, I mean, a lot of people in our time of like going up the car, going on aeroplane, doing all these things that we do, a lot of this he didn't do. So the hukum is not what he did not do, you don't do. The hukum is what he prevented you from, don't do. That is the hukum. Right? Because there are going to be plenty of things that he will not have done. Right? So, but he did give us indications of what is permissible and what is not permissible. And from there, whatever you do, if it's within the circle of permissibility, then it's permissible. If it's outside the circle of permissibility, then it's impermissible. And this has been the understanding of the entire Muslim Ummah for generations. Only until recently, then they began talking against this. Only recently, but for centuries, this has been the understanding of the Muslim Ummah. Right. So this is the most upright and balanced way. As for delving into the categories, the ulama adopted this new method, right? So I mentioned that just now, I read through, and we have reached here. Right? Similarly, when he approved of a matter, he ordered it in general terms so that the people could implement it together with all its categories. What does he mean by all these categories? He means here by doing the sunnah and the wajib, bijami'iha. And he's doing the sunnah and the wajib. So when Rasul did wudu, the Sahaba looked at him doing wudu, and they would see that he did his hands, his mouth, his nose, his face, right? He did his arms, his head, and his feet, and his ears and his feet. And they would see him do it 3 times. And he would say, and he did 3 times, say that whoever increases or decreases from this, then he is not of us. And that is how, you see how he admonishes and how he encourages. And whoever does more than 3 or less than 3, he's not of us. But of course, going to the fiqh, what he actually meant, right, is that it's sunnah. Right? It's not wajib to do 3 times. Right? But the Sahaba, they don't actually discuss these things. To them, he did 3 times, I would always do 3 times. Right? Because that's what he did. And he used to wash his hands and his mouth and his nose. So therefore, I will also always wash my hands and my mouth and my nose. Right? What doesn't matter whether it's sunnah or wajib. It's something he did, therefore I do. That's what it means here by doing it together with all its categories, meaning it's sunnah and wajibs, and you don't actually separate and leave out the sunnahs. And it could be included amongst that which earns Allah's pleasure. For example, he said, the person who abandons the prayer has disbelieved. He did not say he has committed an act of disbelief, he has considered an unlawful act to be lawful, or he has done something which is close to disbelief. So basically, he just to make people pray, he says that whoever abandons the prayer has disbelief. Finish. So he didn't actually go into the intricacies of the law of leaving the prayer. So such expressions have been easier when looked at outwardly, but he did not use any of them because had he done so, his objective of warning about the seriousness of omitting the prayer would have been lost, and it would not have been acted upon. For this reason, the early scholars dislike interpreting his statement. Right? So basically, they like, the way he said it, to take it the way it is. Finish. Right? Because if you begin to take apart the ruling, in a sense, the warning, the feel of the warning, or the essence of the warning, the impact of the warning is lost. The impact. So he says, whoever leaves the prayer has disbelieved. Of course, we know in the Sharia, in fiqh, right, that this means that left the prayer. Disbelief can mean denying Allah's ni'mat. It can mean left the prayer willfully, right, and denying the compassion of the prayer. That one is kafir. Of course, there are different interpretations of what this actually means, which actually gives an entire broad view of people who leave the prayer. Not all of them will be struck off as kafir, whereby they are murtads. No, of course not. There are those who are sinners and they are Muslim. But if you go into all this kind of talk, and you go into this differentiating, those who leave the prayer as there are those who are still Muslim but they're sinners, and those are actually real kafir. And when you go into this kind of talk, you actually dilute the effect of the warning. So what he's trying to do is to warn, right? Those of you who leave the prayer, you have disbelief. So that to wake them up and pull them back into belief by making them do the prayer. However, if I am teaching fiqh and I'm speaking to people who do pray, so I'm not trying to warn you, but I'm trying to teach you the law of leaving the prayer and the implications of leaving the prayer. But I'm not trying to warn you, I'm just teaching what are the implications. So in case that you become a governor or whatsoever, and there are those who leave the prayer, right, and you warn them and they still leave the prayer, then are these people, are they sinners or are they disbelievers? So that's why he says that is the duty of the jurists and the judge and the faqih. Right? That is their duty, and they will determine who is a kafir, who is not. Right? But this kind of statement is to be given to the masses. So it's more of to warn them, don't leave the prayer. Leaving the prayer is a form of disbelief. And not to say you're murtad, but it's a form of disbelief. But he didn't actually go and explain it because to capture the effect, right, or the strength of the statement. So in summary, if he ordered us to do something, it is as if he wanted us to put it into action in the fullest possible manner without omitting any of his categories. Right? So if he commanded you to anything, right, he wants to do it fully. Right? So fully, don't even try to leave out the sunnahs or the or any parts of the act of obedience. The same applies to a prohibition without. This is why he would say at the time of the bay'ah, the pledge of allegiance, to the best of our ability. And whenever the Sahaba would say bay'ah with Rasulullah, he would always include the word to the best of your ability. And you must put in the best of your ability here. Applying all of one's energies and using all of one's capabilities can only be possible when the statement is made in general terms. And this is showing the way of teaching of Rasulullah. Once the specifics are mentioned, it results in neglect and disregard, as can be seen in the actions of masses and those scholars who have no honor in Allah's sight and no acceptance in His court. Scary, these kind of statements, mashallah. Right, but basically you see that people who disregard sunnah, disregard makruh. Right? They are people who have no honor and no standing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because you take things lightly. Right? Every student, the Haram statement, kullu sunnah sannahan nabi asru fil qalbi qawi muttasilan bin nabi. Right? Every sunnah that Rasul has made a sunnah, its effect in the heart is strong, and it is connected. It will connect you to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So a person who is concerned about being connected to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this very person should be concerned about the sunnah. And his disconcern about the sunnah shows his lack of love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Lack of love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? That is why one of the awliya, when he was told, it's a paper story, right, that a man in the town is a wali, right, and to go and gain from his blessing and from his teachings. So he went with his students to that man to look for him, to go and try and gain from the wali. And he saw this man that people claimed to be a wali. They saw him spit on the wall of a mosque as he was entering. He spat by the side of the mosque, right? And this wali, he turned around and said, he is not a wali. A wali would not disregard the house of Allah in that way. Even though it's not haram for him to spit by the side and then outside of the mosque, but it's a complete disregard of the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that shows a person's level with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that shows nothing about his wilayah. Right? So when the ulama say, when it comes to awliya, right, what is the biggest sign of a wali is that he is constantly on obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Constantly. They move from act of obedience to act of obedience to act of obedience and obedience. And the greatest sign of a wali is their istiqamah, on their acts of obedience. Istiqamah. Right? So we hear the story of the wali, they will say, that he prayed subuh with the wudu of Isha for 40 years. Right? The mu'jiza is not that he prayed subuh with the wudu of Isha. The mu'jiza, the karamah. The karamah is not that he prayed subuh with the wudu of Isha. The karamah is that he did that every night for 40 years. That is the karamah. Right there. That is the karamah. So the greatest karamah of awliya is that they don't sin. They actually don't sin at all. And their form of sin is, of course, is their own level lah. But normal sins that normal human beings do, they don't fall into it at all. So backbiting, gossiping, whatever, right? Lying, su'uzon, none of this. Even lapses in their prayer, none of it. They actually suffer from, unlike us people. That's why we want to be a wali. It takes a lot. I hope. Khalil says so.
So it's not something.
But Khalil says so because he wants to fly in the air. So he missed the point of the wali. I like it. Because wali can fly. So I'll be a wali that can fly.
But of course not. One of these, and then I want to be one.
The thing about it is that I want to be beloved to Allah. That's how we see. I want to be beloved to Allah. I want Allah's mercy on me. I want His forgiveness. Right? But one thing position, because one thing being a wali is one thing position. And the true with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yes, but that will be enough to want His reward. Because the true wali will not say he's a wali. That's the thing. So it's not something to strive to, because you will not even say that you are one, right?
Yeah.
But what it is that something that I learned from my teacher previously is that sometimes people, they lose amal, and teaching their consonants. Jurus Jibril or Jurus Murabba, Jurus Nabi. Sahih. ثلاثة جلوسات نجلس هكذا. تمام. Okay, must sit like that murabba, or you sit Jurus Jibril. You know Jurus Jibril or not? Do you know what is Jurus Jibril? Do you know? Can you show Antiza? Antiza don't know what is Jurus Jibril. Can you show her? What is Jurus Jibril? Kesian Antiza don't know what is Jurus Jibril. Can somebody show her?
Okay lah, if Ahmad don't show me, Aisha will show me.
Aisha will show there. Then Aisha should like that. And then Nabi? Just Nabi?
When you want to eat, you know.
Yeah.
When you want to eat, you.
Or one leg up, one leg
Ah.
down. It's just like
Yeah, I call it that in the certificates. So they're only allowed to sit in these 3 ways in class.
Murabba.
Yeah, they cannot sit. It's just right. Because okay, in the sunnah of sitting down in the way of the Prophet ﷺ, the one is specifically for eating. And it said, because for classes actually, I've tried before but it's very hard. Classes, he will sit iftirash. Iftirash, how you sit in yours, yes. The entire time. Iftirash. So the whole 2 hours of class or 1 hour of class, you see iftirash. You just hard up. you get the cramps of the one. Right? But Shaykh Abu Bakr bin Salim used to get to the in his life he will always sit iftirash. And sometimes he used tawarru'. Tawarru' is the one whereby you do on for atahiyah. And he was asked, why do you do that? Then he said, because I am always in the presence of my Lord, like in prayer. So I'm always in His presence. So whenever I sit there, I'm in His presence. You can try, but it's but anyway, the sunnah of sitting in the way of Prophet ﷺ, if you want to hear the scientific part of it, is basically our zaman. Our zaman is like, we say sunnah, people, you mention the science of it, they do it. It's just like, we are to the extent that, here the Shaykh says, last time they used to be told to do it, they will do it. Then we became weaker and they'll be told sunnah and wajib. Now we're even weaker and we'll be told scientific proofs. Then we start doing it, subhanAllah. But for me, I like the scientific proofs because, it just makes us be amazed. If Rasulullah was already amazed, we get more amazed. And when you eat that way, basically what happens is that you lift up your right leg up, right? It presses your stomach. You press against your stomach, and in doing so, you reduce your appetite. See? It's safe stomach stapling. It's very safe stapling. Now they do stomach stapling, whereby they do an operation to cut your stomach, and they make it smaller so you don't eat so much.
They staple your stomach?
You never heard of it? Stomach
No.
stapling. Okay, a lot of people do it. It's an operation whereby you staple your stomach. It's terrible for a person to do, and they don't even know the side effects of it. And I can just preempt that in the future going to have this huge side effect happening from stomach stapling. So anyway, but ourselves natural way of stomach stapling is just to sit that way and you press your stomach. That's it. And therefore you will not eat so much. And also they sit that way because sitting that way enables a person to stand and sit easily. So you don't sit down and have a huge long meal. Right, so they sit that way. You see, when you sit that way, your leg cramp after a while, which stops you from eating too much. And that's why I noticed that whenever I sit that way, you can only eat for a short while. Then you let your leg cramp, right? And you gotta get up or you gotta change your position. So if you really want to know, the moment you leg cramp, that is an indication that you should stop eating. The moment you cramp, that means you get up, enough. Yeah, time limit. It's like an automatic timer. You sit down to eat until your leg cramp, you get up.
And can I eat so much if you sit like that?
Yeah. But it needs to be down on the floor. I mean, how are we going to do on chair unless we pick a chair?
Yeah, another thing, see, eating on a chair at a table is the best way for shaitan to fill up your stomach and you eat for a long time. Because you're so comfortable. You're so comfortable on the chair, table, everything. You just eat and eat and eat. And you sit there, you lepak, you talk, eat slowly. I mean, you do a lot of nonsense. Because you're comfortable. And you don't see the point in moving. And you can eat a lot because your stomach is ready to take a lot of food. So the sunnah, mashallah, the sunnah, the whole point of sleeping, for example, on your right. Now science says that to sleep on your left because it gives you deeper sleep. But as Muslims, you don't want deep sleep. So while we say, why is it that science says sleep on your left? And you're like, yeah, because they want deep sleep. We don't want deep sleep. We want to get up for tahajjud. We want to be light. Right, so that's why it's also more sedap. It feels nicer to be on your left. It is true.
It is true.
It is true. It does feel more sedap and more and nicer to be on your left because
Struggle to force yourself to
yeah, it's shaitan, touching you and tapping you and whatever. Right? But it is also because the left makes you go into deep sleep. The body likes it. The body likes the full deep sleep. Don't get up. Stay asleep until subuh. So the sunnah is sleep in the least comfortable way. Like thinnest mattress, whatever, least comfortable way. So why? You can get up in the night and pray. May Allah help us, May Allah help us. So here he says, thereafter he turned. So we're talking about what it means by fullest possible manner, without omitting any of his categories. The same applies to prohibition. This is why he would say at the time of the bay'ah, to the best of your ability. Applying all of one's energies and using all your capabilities can only be applicable when things are made in general. Once the specifics are mentioned, right, then it will result in neglect and disregard. So they are not men whom neither trade nor sale can divert from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right, these people, the Sahaba, right, they are people who are focused on Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and on whatever he has commanded them to do. Right. The first hadith here of the chapter, Rawa Abu Dawud wa Tirmidhi wa Ibn Majah والسياق لأبي داود عن عبد الرحمن بن عمرو السلمي وحجر بن حجري قال أتينا الإرباض بن just get the harakat correct. أتينا العرباض بن سارية فسلمنا وقلنا أتيناك زائرين وعائدين ومقتبسين. فقال العرباض صلى بنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ذات يوم ثم أقبل علي فوعظنا موعظة بليغة ذرفت منها العيون ووجلت منها القلوب. فقال قائل يا رسول الله كأن هذه موعظة مودع فما تعهد إلينا. فقال أوصيكم بتقوى الله والسمع والطاعة وإن عبدا حبشيا فإنه من يعيش منكم بعدي فسيرى اختلافا كثيرا فعليكم بسنتي وسنة الخلفاء الراشدين تمسكوا بها وعضوا عليها بنواجذ وإياكم ومحدثات الأمور فإن كل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة. Right, Imam Abu Dawud, Imam Tirmidhi, Imam Ibn Majah narrate on the authority of Abdurrahman bin Amr as-Sulami and Hujr bin Hujr, who said, we went to Irbal bin Sariyah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, and he said that we have come as guests, visitors and as seekers of knowledge. They came so to make it clear that they want to hear hadith. I am from Irbal. So Sayyidina Irbal said, one day Rasulullah led us in the prayer. Thereafter he turned to us and delivered a very eloquent admonition that caused eyes to tear and hearts to tremble. A strong admonition that he gave. So a person said, Ya Rasulullah, it is as if it is like an admonition of a person who is bidding farewell. It's as if you will leave us soon. So what do you command us to do? What is your advice? He replied, I advise you to fear Allah. And they said, taqwa of Allah, beware of Allah. and to listen and obey the leader even if he is an Abyssinian slave. There is a very clear indication of Islam that whatever the leader is, you obey the leader. Certainly whoever among you lives after me will experience many differences. You should therefore adhere to my sunnah and sunnah of the rightly guided caliphs. Cling on to it and hold on to it with your molars. Don't let go. And beware of newly invented methods, for every newly invented method is an innovation, and every innovation is a deviation. Right, so here, again, the second part here, people always use this hadith to speak against what is coming up, for example, Maulid, Tahlil, and all that kind of things. But there is misunderstandings from their part. So here, he describes to us the admonition. And he says that first and foremost, the initial admonition was so severe that they all began to weep and they began to tremble from the warning Rasulullah was giving them. And this is the sunnah of Rasulullah to actually warn people to the point they weep and they tremble. So then he said that, he mentioned about always be in obedience to the leader or the governor. Even if they are oppressive, even if they are non-Muslims or whatsoever, always be in obedience to the one who is the governor over you, because if there is a governor over you, then there is usually a system that is in place. As opposed to no governance, there is no system in place. And he informed them of a prophecy telling them that in the future there's going to be a lot of problems. So what do you do? What is the way out, Ya Rasulullah? Hold on to the sunnah and the sunnah of the Khalifas. Another hadith, when he said that it's going to get more and more difficult to the end of time, and they asked him, what should we do? Then he said, hold on to the book of Allah and my sunnah. Another narration, he said, hold on to the book of Allah and my family, the Ahlul Bayt. Hold on to them, and who of them? The scholars of them, the Habaib, the scholars of, and also the Mashayikh you can find in Syria, in Egypt, and so on. So he gives advice here. Okay, and every newly invented method means something that has no basis at all in Islam. No basis. It means it appeared out of nowhere. You cannot find a dalil, or you cannot find anything that will point to it in Islam. That is why, then thereafter, Maulid and Tahlil and everything is all permissible, because they all have proofs, of zikir. All the hadiths about zikir will enter, or proofs of loving the Prophet. All the hadiths of the Prophet will enter into proving a Maulid is permissible. So in a sense, it's just all that was done was that it was just gathered into one majlis. That's all. Like how the Quran was on different pieces of paper, then it was gathered into one mushaf. So the gathering of it makes it easier for people to worship. So even for example, Wirid al-Latif. So I understand people say Wirid al-Latif is a bid'ah. And I said, no, Wirid al-Latif is all from Rasulullah. They say, yes, they know. But it is, he didn't arrange it like that. So you all arranged it like that. So it's a bid'ah. But think about it. If you have all different hadiths all over the place, will you be able to do Wirid al-Latif every morning easily? You won't, because if hadith here, hadith there, hadith here, and you're like, what do I read in the morning? You're bound to forget what you should be reading. But Alhamdulillah, may Allah reward Imam al-Halal really on our behalf. He saw the need to compile. I compile, put it into a text, arrange it so that it is easy to be followed. And there is an arrangement, it's not random. He does arrange it so it's easily done and memorized. And then he give it to the people for them to do. That is what should happen, because it's still in the realm of the sunnah. It's just that you rearrange, that's all. It's the same thing like, you want to wear a jubba at Rasulullah, and then you wear all kinds of colours. The wearing of the jubba itself, or the wearing of the imamah itself, the sabah itself, all of it has its sunnahs. But you want your own colour that you like and whatsoever. It's up to you. Do what you want. So same thing about wearing a ring, like Rasulullah. But you want to wear a different type of ring, or not exactly what he wore. It's just a matter of that lah.
You can hear that.
Huh?
You can hear that.
You can, so when you wear a ring, you need the sunnah of Rasulullah to wear a ring. But as far as I know, to wear a ring on the pinky is sunnah for men. Guys see women wearing on the pinky, right? Because they read on the Shama'il, right? But as far as I know, from the Hababas, they say that wearing the ring on the pinky is a sunnah from men.
Actually, Baba Huda said
Yeah.
we should wear on the right, but I cannot fit my finger.
Ring on the
right. My wedding
Yeah, it
ring
should be on
cannot
the right.
fit on my right.
It should be on the right. Right and a ring finger.
Ah.
That is for the woman. Right and
So I
ring
cannot
finger.
change hand and then I change
And of
ring.
course, and actually the sunnah is for the stone to be inside.
I cannot.
Yeah,
Supposed to
to be
flash
inside. You're not supposed to flash it.
So it's
Right.
better not to get any
Change
diamond
ring.
lah.
Huh?
Right.
Up to you.
Tapi you
It's not better
sana
not to.
orang lagi, sakit.
Yeah, it does scratch them. It does scratch them. That's why
It does scratch,
I put it, bring it. That's my grandmother's one. It's her stone. My grandmothers, they all like this kind of stuff. Whenever you see me wear a ring, it looks oldish. It's my grandmother's.
It's a wax stone.
It's her birthstone. I don't know what it is. But I know it's her birthstone. Because she likes it. And she told me before it's her birthstone. So I don't know what that means. But I know she liked it. So she has, so we have like her jewelry lah she left behind. So my mother give out to the granddaughters.
Yes, I know.
So
Okay, so this is the sunnah.
but I only wear it because it's hers. So I wear it. It's hers. Right, so that is emotional attachment lah. Emotional attachment. You've seen her wear it before, so you wear it. So
You remember wearing it?
I can see it on her finger. Old finger, she has it on. Right, so it right,
It's a sunnah that women wear a ring on the right on this finger.
yeah. Yeah.
From Rasulullah.
That one is no. There are. You look at Shama'il, there are fingers whereby he does wear rings on, not just the pinky. There are fingers that they are allowed, right? But the fingers that are not recommended is the pointer, middle, and the thumb. These three. You wear on these three.
That's like the cool, you know, when you put on the tongue. That's quite
Yeah, it's these two.
back then.
Yeah, she wear rings on. Allah Alam. But Rasulullah also, when he wore ring for a reason. Like, it's not just to show off or whatever. He wore his ring, he had his seal of the Prophet. And when he was writing letters, so he kept it on a ring, as you can see it easily. The Muhammad Rasulullah. You will see that he wore aqiq stones. Aqiq stones, I have it actually. So he wasn't wearing it also. It's British. Yeah, it's British.
Already.
It's aqiq Yemeni. It's a British stone. But now it can't fit me. It used to fit me, now it fits my pinky. So I stopped wearing it because it's tight. So, but then the Aqiq Yemeni is, there are a lot of benefits, the stone itself. It removes iron, it removes negative energy, it balances out or regulates your menses. This I have Sa'ad. Have Sa'ad wrote about the Aqiq Yemeni, and he said a particular colour. He said, is the colour, the reddish that will come out when you wash a chicken that is freshly slaughtered. The water that is kind of reddish, he said, to buy the stone of black. You see? But that is how he described the colour, okay?
Like the chicken fat.
Yeah, that one I cannot forget. You cannot look at chicken fat the same ever.
Egg white smell.
Yeah, like I see the albumin, I'm
People,
like, oh
people
man.
live in villages, okay? So when you want to talk about colour or things, this is what they know. So I bought it, and it mashallah, when I was wearing it, it affected my cycle. And it also affects your mood. So basically, all like mood rings and whatsoever. Like. Allahu Alam, in their reality, because the stones can absorb negative energy. Right? So, but we do know, so for us, Allahu Alam, but what we know is what Rasul did. And he wore aqiq stones. So you see Habib sometimes Habib, he will wear stone on his fingers, on his pinky finger, that is aqiq. Aqiq can be black, can be red, right, reddish, maroon, right, the different colours of aqiq. Right, so he will wear aqiq. I always say Habib, he will always wear aqiq. And that is the sunnah of Zen.
You can buy there.
So yeah, very cheap.
Kirim.
Yeah, and you can buy aqiq as a necklace. I had an aqiq necklace. I don't know what it is now.
What's my size?
I keep losing my size.
So you can wear on your chest also.
Yeah.
Then you should wear a key as a pendant.
Yeah, I have a pendant aqiq,
Oh,
but
you have?
I lost it.
No, the ring you wear.
Yeah,
as
I
a-
need to put it as pendant.
Yeah.
I just hoping that one day I can wear it again.
Inshallah, inshallah.
Okay, inshallah.
Actually can fade. It's just that because it's so thick that when water goes through, it makes my skin expand. As in the skin, it holds water because of the ring being hollow. It's a hollow ring. So it's silver also. So it makes and it makes my skin become white because it absorbs the water.
But that's normal for a ring. Tak? Or tak?
I think for a tight ring.
You can see my finger here is already white and
Yeah, I thought
slimmer.
it's normal.
Is it?
It's like the right hand
Anyway.
cannot fit because it's not slimmer like this. Cannot fit anyway.
Your one finger slimmer than the other finger.
What? No, because this one has not like grown fatter because of the ring. But this one has grown fatter because it doesn't have any like girdle, you know. Girdle,
So
yeah.
so that means the
This was
Western
my
idea
size.
of the ring being on the left
Then it should be the opposite of sunnah.
is apa sunnah lah. And the ring's on the right.
So if you get married, you should put it on the right.
Yeah.
To get engaged.
And also putting a ring when you get married is nothing to do with
It's
sunnah.
sunnah, right?
It's culture. It's culture. So does not make it wrong. Especially if it wards off fitnah. That they see a ring and they know that you are married. Then there be something that is good lah. So nobody will approach you because married. Okay. So hadith 121. Let me check the Rawah Muslim hadith 121. Rawah Muslim wa Nisa'i wa Ibn Majah wa lafzu li Muslim عن جابر بن عبد الله الأنصاري رضي الله تعالى عنهما قال كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا خطب حمرت عيناه وعلى صوته واشتد غضبه حتى كأنه منذر جيش يقول صباحكم مساكم ويقول بعثت أنا والساعة كهاتين ويقارن بين إصبعيه السبابة والوسطى يقول أما بعد فإن خير الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل بدعة ضلالة ثم يقول أنا أولى بكل مؤمن من نفسه من ترك مالا فلأهله ومن ترك دينا أو ضياعا فإلي وعلي. Right, this is all how he warns. His admonitions. Imam Muslim, Imam Nisa'i, Imam Ibn Majah narrate on the authority of Jabir bin Abdullah al-Ansari radiyallahu anhu, who said, when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to deliver a sermon, his eyes would become red. And that means that the veins would start coming out, not all red lah, but the veins would come out. His voice become loud and his anger used to be so intense that it was as though he was warning an army, saying, the enemy will attack you in the morning, the enemy will attack you in the evening. He would say, I and the final hour have been sent like these two. And would then join his index and middle fingers. He would say, the best speech is the book of Allah. The best way is the way of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The worst of matters, the best guide. And the worst of matters are innovations, and every innovation is deviation. He would then say, I have more right over every believer in his own life, on his own self. One who leaves wealth, it is for his family. One who leaves a debt or incurs any loss, it is for me and upon me to settle the debt on his behalf. Right, so this is basically part of the hadith. And if you go through my reading classes, I will explain the hadith fully for you. But the point here is that this is how he would admonish. He gets straight to the point. He will say things that will stir people up, right, and make them focus. And there's nothing better for you to engage yourself with than the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Focus on the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is no better guidance than the guidance of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is why it is unfortunate that for us in our time, people like to quote all kinds of people from around the world and they fail to quote the Prophet ﷺ in his guidance. But there's so much guidance in life, people, family, emotions, all from Rasulullah ﷺ, and for us to learn from. Right, so the worst method is innovation, because innovation brings people towards disbelief, and innovation is deviation. The last part, I have more right over every believer. It means that I am closer to him than his own family. Meaning that if he needs any help, I am the first to come to his aid. Right, so that's why he made it clear. I have a right. Does not mean that I'm going to take his inheritance. No, what it means is that I'm going to pay his debt. And that is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He pays the debt of the believers passing before him. He would settle that debt. Rasulullah he would settle that debt because he knows the punishment in the grave for the one who dies with debt. So he would first ask the Sahaba who was settle the debt of the brother, and if no one will do it, then he will do it. And therefore he is foremost to the believer than his own self, meaning that he is more caring and more loving towards the believer than his own self. And that is true. He loves us more than our own selves. We don't love ourselves as much as Rasulullah has loved us. Right? So he is foremost, right, and is more loving and caring to the believer than his own self. Okay. Then we have the next chapter, which is on targhib and tarheeb, right? Invitation and warning. We'll take it next time now, inshallah. Okay, alhamdulillah. Sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wasallam. Jazallahu anna sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam khairan. Jazallahu anna sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam wa ahlu. Jazallahu anna sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam khairan. Jazallahu anna sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam wa ahlu. Jazallahu anna sayyidina wa nabiyyina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wasallam أفضل ما جزى نبيا عن أمته. يا الله بها يا الله بها يا الله بحسن الخاتمة. يا الله بها يا الله بها يا الله بحسن الخاتمة. يا الله بها يا الله بها يا الله.